Welcome to The Difference Makers, a Paladin Security podcast. We'll take you inside the world of security and share firsthand expertise from our industry professionals. Join us as we dive into everything security and explore the journeys of those who go above and beyond to make our world a safer and friendlier place.
Welcome to The Difference Makers. I'm Christina Hidanis. Today's guest is Amy Morse, Operations Manager at our PalAmerican Chicago branch. Amy began her career in law enforcement, but a critical incident led her to rethink her future. That's when she found security. Her values and goals perfectly aligned with PalAmerican's mission. And from the moment she joined in 2022, she was determined to contribute her boots-on-the-ground knowledge to enhance the security approach within the communities we serve. Here is Amy Morse. Hi, Amy. Thank you so much for joining us today.
It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me.
You have quite an interesting story, and so I want to kind of dive right into it. But tell me a little bit about how you got into security.
Sure. I was a full-time sheriff's deputy for 10 years. And from that point, I transitioned to a chief of police position, which was part-time in a very small village. And in order to supplement my income during that time, I started doing armed security as a secondary position. And eventually, I chose to make the decision to do it full-time.
Okay. And was there something that kind of stood out to you, like when you were doing it and you're like, oh, I'm really enjoying this? Like, what was it about it that you enjoyed to decide to like leave law enforcement and do private security?
Well, that's kind of a loaded question. Being in law enforcement was actually all that I ever wanted to do in life. That was, my career. That's where I thought I was always going to be. And due to certain circumstances that had happened throughout my career, I made the decision to stop doing law enforcement, and armed security to me was an extension of law enforcement that would help me still be able to help people, which is my number one goal in life, and so that helped me transition from the law enforcement side of things. Armed security was almost just a next step in a phase from that.
You were part of a life-changing incident. Can we talk a little bit about it and the impact that it had on you and your career path?
Absolutely. I was dispatched to a check well-being of a 10-year-old boy by his grandma. At the end of my shift, I was up working an afternoon shift, so it was about 10 o'clock at night. I arrived at the scene and pulled up in front of the big bay window and knocked on the door, announced myself, knocked on the door, sheriff's office. Took a couple minutes. I heard, a little bit of scuffling going on in the background. There was not much room on the staircase. The gentleman opened the door and put a gun to my head. And, I immediately stepped back, drew my weapon, and there we sat together. Guns pointed at each other. The 10-year-old little boy is standing there next to his dad. And I'm telling him, that he needs to drop the weapon. And that I'm here, just to check on his son. And, he told me he had the right to protect his property and that I shouldn't have been showing up there at night in the middle of the dark. And I just decided in that second that I needed to talk with him and make sure, I couldn't make that decision. They say that you have, less than a second to make a decision when those things happen. And I didn't pull the trigger. I looked at that little boy and decided, with all of the training and interviewing and crisis intervention training that I had had, that, I was going to talk to him, whether it meant that he was going to ultimately choose to pull the trigger or not. So we just talked. And eventually he put the gun down, made it safe. I was able to holster mine. I checked on the little boy and I went home. Uh, but I couldn't have, I almost didn't go home. And in that moment, I had to make that decision. And to be honest with you, I was criticized a lot for that decision that I made. Instead of, we're taught that as soon as somebody pulls a gun on you, that's automatic threat to life. Um, but I didn't, I couldn't do it. I looked over at that little boy and that dad and thought, if I have any chance in the world to talk to him, to get him to change his mind, that's what I'm going to do. And it, by grace of God, it worked for me.
Yeah.
That time.
Wow. Do you regret how you handled that? Or are you happy with the way that you went about it and came out successful on both sides, I think so.
I think about it. I think about it a lot. And I personally feel that I made the right decision, because I would never want to traumatize a child. And I don't know that I could have lived with myself if I had somebody in front of a child. So, um, I think if I had to do it over again, I would have done it the exact same way. Um, but at that point, I think I was in shock for a little while. After that, I don't think I really truly hit me, exactly how close you can't, I came to death and was successful. And at that point, I thought, I've done this for so many years. I was injured and had to have back surgery, and came back from that. Um, I just looked at myself one day in the mirror and was like, I want to see grandkids someday. I want to watch my kids grow up. I want to, there's so many things that I want to do with my life. And is this, you know, can I continue to keep doing this every day? And after about 6 months, I was done. I just decided that's when I, transitioned over to doing armed security, and which in my eyes was much safer. And so that I could be around for my kids and my grandkids in the future.
Wow. That's Wow, that story just, I mean, I'm so grateful that you shared that with us, and how you handled it. I think a lot of people can learn from what you just said too, about different ways to handle, de-escalation skills, and may not do exactly, what comes to mind first, but talking it out, and the power that has to change an incident, the outcome of an incident.
Absolutely, it does, because it wouldn't have just changed the life for me or for that gentleman, but for that little boy, for the rest of his life too, no matter what decision his dad made. And I didn't want that little boy to have to live with that for the rest of his life either.
For sure. Wow. Well, that was a great example of doing good through law enforcement. Is that why you got into it in the first place?
Um, I wanted to help people who couldn't help themselves. I think that was the biggest thing for me. During my time in law enforcement, I was an investigator for a good part of that, lead homicide certified. I was crisis intervention trained, certified in forensic interviewing for children of abuse. It was always all about, being there for people who didn't have the ability to to help themselves, and being able to give them the resources to be able um, to have a place to live, have a place to go if they needed to go. If to put bad people away, who did bad things to children and stuff like that. I put a lot of abusers, child abusers in prison. Um, I've held the hands of lots of family members who I've had to tell them that they've lost a loved one. Lots of fatal car crashes, suicides, those sorts of things, which, they all relate to mental trauma. Um, and, I even an autopsy on a 2-year-old child, that was probably one of the worst, I could say, as far as mental trauma goes. But getting justice for that child was how you made it through it. And, the beginning, and that was just the beginning of it, there, with so many years, I went through so many different things, but, all of those things, all of the negative things that happened, all of the negative trauma, I wouldn't have traded it for the world, because the the positive outweighed the negative in so many different ways, for all the lives that I could save, all the people that I could help, um, and making sure that everybody was safe and that justice was done for them. I needed to be the voice for the people who couldn't speak for themselves.
For sure. Now that seems like I want to touch on mental health, but first I just want to ask, like, that seems like a lot of pressure to be able to show up for those families or to do the right thing. How were you able to, I guess, compartmentalize that and not have it just fully take over your life, that you just, need to find these answers or need to do the right thing?
It was something that you had to learn to, like you said, compartmentalize. When I would show up on the scene of any tragedy, it was, right now they need me to be strong. They're looking to me. This is the worst. It's a crisis, that they're in crisis. And I have to be the one to be able to show them that everything is going to be okay and lead them in the right direction. And obviously, I can't be falling apart and be able to do that at the same time. So, I had to learn to, set my feelings aside at that moment and dedicate myself to making sure that I did everything for them that I could, and got them through what they needed to get through. And then, I could reflect on the situation, later after the fact.
For sure. And that's a good lesson too for, security officers, even dealing with, some of the traumatic things that they deal with. And even when you were saying about the negative mental health, how, what advice do you have, I guess, for people that are dealing with such, traumatic situations or negative issues, that they can keep, a hold of their mental health and you know, help them, I guess, make it through, and not have it be like, a huge impact that they're struggling with, the next situation, or, PTSD or anything like that.
Sure. I'm probably not the best one to give the advice. It took me a really long time in law enforcement um, to figure out how to deal with that kind of trauma. In law enforcement in self, probably as far as security as well, there's a stigma that, you have to be a certain type of person to be able to handle those situations. And if you claim that you have an issue, or that you're struggling because of it, it shows a sign of weakness, and makes them feel like, maybe you're not capable of doing the job because of it. But in my eyes, you're the right person, because if it doesn't affect you, then you shouldn't be doing your job. You shouldn't be doing that job. These things are things that most people in their life will never see, never even think about seeing. And when you are subjected to that over and over, you have to find a way to be able to deal with it, and it should affect you. It's traumatic. It's traumatic for the families. It's traumatic for, you yourself. And, not only are you worrying about how you're feeling about it, you're thinking about them and what they're going through. They're actually in the trauma. I'm just trying to help them through it. And so, it's talking to your team, your peers, in law enforcement, I always say it's one of the biggest brother and sisterhoods out there. Check on your teammates, check on your brothers and sisters. And, if something has happened traumatic at work, at the work situation, be there for them, check in on them, see how they're doing. And, we always had kind of a buddy system where we would always make sure that if there was a very traumatic event, that we would check in on that officer. And if we thought that the officer was having a hard time, then maybe we would have some more conversations about, getting them the help that they need, and let them know that they're not alone.
Yeah, no, that's really good advice. I want to pivot a little bit to armed security. Now, it's what I guess what kind of armed security did you do? Was it was with? Can you tell me a little bit more about your career path into being an armed security guard officer?
Yes, yeah. So initially, I started with a company that hired off-duty and retired police. And I did that for a little while at a location in Rockford. And during that time, PalAmerican had taken a new contract there at my location. They had taken over the contract for, I was an armed officer on the exterior of the building, and PalAmerican got the contract for the interior of the building. So initially, I was with the other company doing the armed security, and then PalAmerican came in, and I eventually transitioned over to PalAmerican, and that's how I started.
Right. So then you kind of moved up the ranks, security officer and now operations manager in the Chicago branch. What has your journey been like from the point when you were the armed security officer with the other company to joining PalAmerican and then kind of moving up in the last 2 or so years?
Yeah, it's been kind of crazy. You got to take opportunities when you get them, I guess. When I started as PalAmerican, initially, as an officer, um, you could tell that it was kind of new in Illinois. I had the feeling that there were things that could be done better. Let's just put it that way. Just from past experience and working in law enforcement, I was like, we could be doing things so much better. And so, the first time there was a director position open, even though I knew I wasn't ready for it, I applied. And I went through the interview process. I made it through round two, but it wasn't my time yet. And I had so much more to learn, and I had so much more to prove, not only to myself, but to Jason and Eugene and to the company, about my abilities. And because I was new too. So, they had to get to know me just as much as I had to get to know them. But I just loved the company. I came from a brotherhood, and I saw the same type of cultural and values in PalAmerican. Um, and so after I applied for the director position, it kind of put things a little bit in perspective. And I'm like, okay, I'm just going to keep on trying, and working every day. And eventually the client service manager position came open. So I said, okay, I'm going to try for that. So I applied for that position and I got it. Um, and I absolutely loved that position. I love mentoring our employees. I love building strong relationships with clients, interviewing and hiring new employees, being able to be the first person to meet the next face of our company was just very important to me. Interviews are the most important in my eyes. I schedule them in 1 hour blocks and spend a lot of time with the individuals before making a decision, because it's so important to me, um, that I get to know them and their situations and stuff before, they work with us.
Right. Yeah. So you talk about mentoring and how it's a passion of yours. Why is it so important for you to invest in your team?
Investing in my team, investing in their individual growth and giving them the ability to learn and continue to grow within the company and investing in their strengths. You know, PalAmerican is huge about promotion from within. And, it's great to see somebody come in at the interview and tell me that they're looking at this as a career and they want to be able to learn as much as possible to be able to move up and, eventually someday be sitting in my seat, and that's inspirational for me. Always making sure that people have the tools that they need for success is, I think it makes them successful. It makes the company successful. It makes the entire team successful.
For sure. What factors do you think make you a good leader or a strong leader?
Um, I would have to say, I'm a team player. Everything that I do is for my team. We always collaborate together, listening to their ideas and options, um, continually fostering their growth, having compassion and empathy, and just really being a good mentor, being there for them to talk to and giving them advice and helping them whatever step of the way. Some people who come to this position, I know that they're only here for a while because they're going to college to eventually do something else, but I give them as much as we can while they're here and until they move on to bigger and better things. And then there are also people who come in and they want this as a career, as their career choice. And so, making sure that you're there and giving them the training and the confidence and the skill set to be able to do it is just an amazing feeling.
Now, it seems like you're not afraid to follow your dreams, so to speak, with your background in law enforcement and everything that all the tasks you handled, everything you succeeded in. Being a woman in law enforcement, in security, and in a leadership role. Um, why, I guess, what about it is important to you, and are there any kind of barriers that you faced along the way that have kind of been a struggle, or have you been able to kind of hit everything head on because you are that confident leader and kind of know the path that you want to take?
Law enforcement was an extremely hard position to be in, especially as a woman. But it was something that I had always dreamed of doing. Helping people has just always been my calling. It's my passion. And when you have passion for something, you don't give up. Honestly, the more that people thought I couldn't do it, the more inspiration and fight it gave me to prove them all wrong. Was it the hardest thing I've done in my life? Absolutely. Was it the most rewarding? More than I could ever have realized. And the security sector is the same way, essentially, especially on the corporate side of things. I tell myself every day that as long as I am passionate and confident in myself, that I can overcome any barriers that are put in my way. It doesn't mean that it's always a good day, doesn't, and that's the biggest thing is I've told myself from the time that I started in law enforcement, you look at yourself in the mirror every day. And as long as you are able to look at yourself and know that you have good morals and ethics and you are okay with the decisions that you make, you can do anything.
Yeah. No, I love that. Is there, since you've kind of stepped into this operations manager role, have there ever been times that, maybe someone on your team is new or doesn't necessarily like having a female leader or anything like that? And if so, how have you been able, or this could be even like in your law enforcement days, but, how have you been able to overcome that and, not take it personally?
It's taken me a long time not to take it personally. I just everything that I've done, law enforcement was, male dominated, and I had lots of officers who um, didn't think that I was capable of doing the position or automatically assumed that, I was going to be good at handling, um, domestic abuse and child abuse. But when it came to a bar fight, that shouldn't be my place. But I can tell you in 10 years, I could walked into a bar every time there was a fight, never had to put a hand on anybody in order to get them to separate. You know what I mean? It's all about learning how to talk. I've spent my life learning how to talk to people and understanding their physical and emotional signs, and making sure that you capitalize on that. Even in the security industry, a lot of the corporate, every place that I walk in where we're having meetings and get-togethers and networking events, it's all male dominated. You see a speckle of women, throughout the room, but every table you sit at that's just the way that it is. But that doesn't mean that should stop me from, wanting to follow my dreams. I just step right in and start talking, and most of them, they just don't know you. So once they get to know the type of person that you are, it usually changes. So it's usually about perception. Initially it's always about, oh, you're a female, this isn't the type of work that you should be doing. But once you keep stepping up, and showing that has nothing to do with what your decisions are, um, it's a mind changer.
Yeah, I love that. It's so well said because it is true. I think it's just about perception, as you said. So, we just have a few minutes left, so I have a couple more questions I want to ask. What would you say you're most proud of throughout your career?
I would say throughout my career, I don't even know if I could pick, the relationships that I've built with the community that I've served for so many years. You know, to watch the kids grow up, to be there for them, for the families in crisis that I was able to help in their time of need, the relationships that I built with their families, the relationships that I've built with my team members, and my, transferring over to security now, my PalAmerican family, all of them. that's what I'm most proud of is amazing relationships.
Okay, two more questions. Do you have any advice to others that you would love to share about maybe someone who wants to move up in the security industry, or someone, maybe a female in the law enforcement or security industry? Anything that you think would be, a little good piece of advice that you would like to pass on?
Sure. From my advice, from what I've learned, is that nothing in life is handed to you. You have to work hard for it. And as long as you have passion, just don't ever stop. Don't stop. Don't let the barriers get in the way. Anytime there's a barrier, find a way around it. Sometimes we are our own worst enemies.
Great advice. Now we're going to have a little bit of fun. Tell me about what makes Amy Amy. What kind of person are you? What do you like to do? What are your passions and hobbies? I know you said you love to help people, but I want to see who you are kind of outside of work and learn a little bit more about you.
So I have an absolutely amazing husband who is my best friend and my soulmate. I have 3 children who are grown, which means out of the house, but they never really truly grow up, I don't think. I have a passion for animals. I have a Siberian Husky and a German Shepherd. Those are my babies since my kids have moved out. Some of my kids have dogs and I babysit them. They're my granddogs. And recently I just found out that I'm going to be an actual grandma. So
Oh,
I
congratulations.
am, so excited to be a grandma. So that's coming in May of 2025. So we'll see how that goes.
Yeah, congrats. Do you know if it's a boy or girl?
They know, but they're doing a gender reveal, so I do not know yet, but I can't wait. I'm gonna love it no matter what.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, that's so awesome. I love it. Well, thank you very much, Amy, for sharing your incredible story and journey from, law enforcement to where you are today. I really appreciate everything, all the advice you gave and, your background and just hearing kind of how you've learned different, tactics and skills to be where you are today. So I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
Thanks for listening to The Difference Makers, a Paladin Security podcast. Check out our socials and website at paladinsecurity.com for more episodes.